Strange Investigations. As always, I'm your host, Ron Swanson. Now today we are going to be getting into an extremely interesting topic called Operation Northwoods. Now, a lot of people associate this as the precursor to 9/11, but it never actually occurred. It was an operation that the CIA planned. However, it did not end up getting carried out. Thankfully, this seemed like it would have been a pretty devastating operation, but it should be an extremely interesting video, so sit back and enjoy, and let's get right on into it. Now, Operation Northwoods, as I have already previously stated, was a planned false flag operation to be able to send our troops to Cuba. We were going to pin attacks on Cuba that we would actually instigate. Now, this was going to be happening in a number of steps. The first one we were going to start with was starting many rumors through the radio. Now, if you think that the CIA hasn't gotten into your media yet, boy, are you wrong, because they have very obviously already have people in your media, as stated here, where they were going to start rumors of a Cuban attack through the radio, so people start thinking about it. This would make it less of a shock and make people think, wow, I can't believe they actually did that, but we felt like this was coming, instead of something that was just completely out of the blue and something people are going to be suspicious through. So yeah, it's pretty interesting. They're going to start it all through the media, which is something you can see today with a lot of the stuff that's carried out. Oftentimes it starts with the media and then it actually progresses to real life. So that's something you can really watch out for, and it's pretty scary that they have taken advantage of the media and they have gotten their own guys inside. Now, the second step of this operation was we were going to have friendly Cubans in uniform actually come and start a false attack on a U.S. military base. They would be able to use that to, capture footage and be able to use that as propaganda. So they would just have these friendly group of Cubans come out here, and these are guys in uniform. So they're going to come and make it look like Cuba had started an uninstigated attack on a U.S. military base to start garnering some support. Now, step 3 of this operation would include the U.S. having some friendly Cuban saboteurs come inside of the base, act like they're going to sabotage it, then have U.S. troops come in and capture these saboteurs and make it look like these U.S. troops are like heroes that went in and captured the enemy Cubans that are going to blow up and kill a bunch of people. And this would be the U.S., another way for the U.S. to create this propaganda of Cuba having this uninstigated attack on the United States. Now, step 4 of this operation would involve even more sabotage. Now, what they would do is they would blow up ammunition and begin to start fires in the base. Obviously, this would look really scary to people on an outside view that don't know what's going on. It would make it look like, hey, there's probably troops dying in here, and it's really bad. So they would be able to photograph that and, use that as media to get out and use as even more propaganda. Basically, this entire operation was just going to be propaganda to get into Cuba, if you haven't been able to figure that one out already. But yeah, it's pretty crazy. They're just going to start blowing up these ammunitions and starting massive fires inside of the base. Now, moving on to step 6, what they would proceed to do is burn aircraft on the air base, just create even more chaos, make even more propaganda to use. So yeah, that's it. Step 6 is a pretty simple one. They're just going to start burning the aircraft in the air base. And now, moving on from step 6, we're on to step 7, where they would begin launching mortars onto the base from the outside gates. They would begin just blowing stuff up and creating even more chaos, creating even more destruction with these mortar attack onto the military base. Step 8 would involve the U.S. military capturing and approaching assault, heading for Guantanamo City. Sorry if I mispronounced that, it's kind of a hard one. But they would have these U.S. troops go in as heroes, capturing this assault that was approaching this city just to, create more of a devotion to the troops and create more support and more, and just higher the overall morale. Step 9 would involve even more heroism on the U.S.'s part, where they would be capturing a militia group that would be storming the base, and it's just creating even more morale for the troops. And now we are almost finished, moving on to step 10, where they would begin sabotaging a ship in the harbor. This would create a massive fire. This could just be obviously used to create more chaos, make the scene look more real, make it even more terrifying, and growing more support for a potential war on Cuba. And step 11 would be a continuation of step 10, where they would go in and sink the ship in the harbor, and they would then conduct funerals for MOOC victims. This could be used as just bring pain to the American people, create hatred, and hatred leads to violence and war. So when they see that these Cubans are killing our soldiers, obviously people aren't going to react well to that, so they're going to create these funerals and put it in the newspaper about these MOOC victims dying. After completing all of these steps, the CIA would create this U.S. response that would include destroying all the attacking artillery and just having them succeed and win the day against Cuba's attack on the United States, just to bring more country pride, I would assume, make sure morale is up, and so that would pretty much be what the U.S. response they would create is. Now, the next big thing the CIA would do is create a "Remember the Maine." It would be a quote that they would try to use to create more support. Now, there are a couple of ways they're going to go about doing this. One would be creating false attacks on unnamed ships, and they would create false casualties to, just add even more support to this potential war. They would also begin, possibly one of the options they were going to use would be blowing up unmanned drones, just to create more fear in the American people's eyes. And another way they would go about creating this "Remember the Maine" is a big reason why people tie this event to 9/11. It's not the biggest one, but they would begin developing these Cuban terrorist attacks that would happen in Florida, specifically Miami, or they were even considering Washington. Doesn't state whether this is Washington the state or if they were interpreting it as Washington D.C., but the way they say it, I interpret that they were talking about the D.C. area, as it would create a lot more chaos and a lot more fear and a lot more of a need to go down and shut down these Cubans. Now, to add on to all of this, what they would do is create these quote-unquote hijacking planes. If you've ever heard of that from 9/11, I don't know if you have. It rings a bell for some reason. But they would have these hijacking planes be shot down, which they were going to get by having these college students. They were going to find a plane full of college students, a plane that was kind of a little bit more off the radar, and college students, with the way they were going to go about this, that were off on holiday, they're going to shoot it down and lie and call it Cuban hijacking and a assault on an attempted terrorist attack. I don't know where I've ever heard that one before, but it is kind of interesting. They would also plan on sinking a large amount of Cubans coming to America. By the way it says it can be interpreted, they're talking about Cuban refugees, and that's just kind of messed up, just sinking a bunch of these refugees coming to the States just for, propaganda purposes. But on that note, that will actually wrap up how deep I'm going to get into this. It does get deeper. I would suggest, as always, going and looking at the report that the CIA released Of course, as I always do, look at it for yourself, make your own interpretations. In my eyes, it does look very similar to the 9/11 attack, with all the mentions of terrorism and the plane that they were going to shoot down involving these college students. I think it's pretty messed up. I'm glad that it never actually happened. I'm glad that Operation Northwoods did not go through. It would have been no good, but it really does make you question how much of these operations that we have seen, whether they were operations or actual attacks, were actually just staged by our own government to be able to take an advantage of other countries. But yeah, it really does just make you think. And of course, thinking is never a bad thing. Everybody that labels these conspiracy theorists as terrible people, just remember that to be a conspiracy theorist, that doesn't mean you're believing everything. It means that you are just thinking about logical possibilities, of course. But yeah, it just makes you open your eyes a little bit what the CIA is really willing to do to their own people, and how maybe they aren't as great, and how maybe the U.S. government isn't as great and beautiful as we all like to imagine it is. But on that note, as happy as it is, we are going to wrap up this video. You guys have had a great time listening. I've had a great time recording. And just have a wonderful rest of your day, night, or whenever you're listening to this. Have a great one. God bless y'all. Amen.